Hello once again YouTube, Chris the Nutbringer here, bringing you a very special New Eden Fleetworks ship showcase video. Today we will be looking at a Dreadnought class, the second largest class of ship from EVE Online in StarMade. So as you can see, I am in a Caldari shuttle. It's one of the shuttles that I recently completed. You may have seen it in my previous video. And I cleared out the glass in the front so that the cameras were not obstructed, so that you can get the best view when I am taking this shuttle around the Naglfar, which is the first ship that I imported. It's the biggest one in terms of a longest axis. It is 5,137 meters long. So, let's get started. Let's take a look at this ship, because it is quite massive and it's going to take us the entire length of this video to even get to the bottom, or from one end to the other. So, I'm somewhere near the top. On some side of the screen, you should see a representation of the ship as well as an indicator displaying where I am relative to the ship. And we will be just looking around this ship and looking at just how massive this thing is. So, this is a Minmatar ship. It is a very unique looking ship. I will point out right now that the top of it got chopped off, and that's just because I didn't change the sector size to the right height when I started this, but that's okay. There really isn't much above or on the bottom of the ship that was cut off. The majority of it is still going to be loaded. So, it's a Minmatar ship, like I said, and it's very vertical. And it's massive, as you can see. And not sure if that's an actual turret hardpoint somewhere over there on the side of that hull, but it's entirely possible that the actual turret hardpoints are just so large that equipping a small turret would be impractical. And it would probably blow it up too, simply because of the amount of power required to supply these turrets with, you know, the energy required to fire their weaponry and all that stuff. Here's some of the engines. I'm assuming these are more maneuvering thrusters than actual propulsion engines, simply because there's larger engines down below that seem to make up the bulk of the propulsion system. The Minmatar, as well as the other races, all use a very specific type of engine and power design systems and all that stuff. Minmatar specifically use plasma core matter antimatter drives, which basically means they get their power from fusing or exploding antimatter and matter together. Other ship types use different power cores and all that stuff. So we'll be seeing those in the future when we take a look at those ships. And actually, we'll come back here real quick. And you may notice that there's these cage-looking structures in the back here, with a inside these recesses, should I say. And what this actually is a large elevator shaft designed to go up and down the length of the back of the ship. You can see just how far down those go, and the elevators are there at the bottom. I'm not sure if it will ever be possible to make those undockable so that you can actually move them around. I say that because in the far future, I do plan on making this some sort of space station. You may be thinking I'm a little crazy right now, but considering, you know, all the advancements that this game has made in terms of building techniques and stuff like that, I think it's entirely possible. And it would be a pretty fun community project, which is something else I'll be talking about in a few moments. But first, let's take a look at this. This is a turret hardpoint. That entire lower section of this structure that you see before you would be mounting a turret. And the turret would pretty much fill up the entire indentation there that you see in that structure. So can you imagine 4 of those turrets firing at once at another one of these sized ships? It's quite impressive. The Minmatar specifically use, what would you call it, projectile weaponry. So think of an actual shell or some sort of cannon that they would be firing, similar to the cannons that we have today. This is one of their, you know, hallmarks, because frankly, Minmatar don't seem as advanced as the other races. They were originally slaves, so that might contribute to the fact that they just do not have similar technology to the other races. Caldari use hybrid turrets, which are a mix between an actual shell and energy. Amar use almost entirely laser-designed weaponry. The Gallente also use hybrid turrets as well. All these flat pieces of structure that you see sticking out the back here are actually sensors. It's just like a leftover of the importing process. Those are really just parts of the 3D model that have a texture overlaid on them with an alpha, so that it would appear as if it was, you know, a mesh of sensors and antennas sticking out. And they cover the entire backside and front side of this ship. Here we can see some of the larger engines. I suppose these would be the more less of a maneuvering engine and more of a full-on propulsion engine. You can see just how big these things are. And since I'm in the Caldari shuttle, we can zoom out a bit, and I'll give you a quick glimpse into the scale of this thing. This Caldari shuttle at its longest length is 44 or 45-ish meters across. Just look how big this Titan is. It's not even a Titan, it's just a dreadnought. Titans are at least twice as tall in length, or twice as long in length. This engine section is so big that I can actually fly the shuttle into it. Is that not ridiculous? So we'll continue descending. Another thing to note is that all of the races have a specific type of sensor type. For example, the Caldari, I believe, use gravimetric sensors. We'll be talking about those in a different video when I show off Caldari capital ships. But Minmatar specifically use LADAR. Now, one of the key features of a Minmatar ship are the fins, the glass fins. And everyone assumes that those are in fact radiator fins when they're not. Turns out those fins help utilize their LADAR technology to pinpoint and target ships. If you don't know what LADAR is, it's laser-assisted detection and ranging. It's basically radar, but using lasers instead. So the fins actually do make sense. Imagine shooting a laser and receiving a signal back because you have a massive glass fin that collects the data and is then processed so that you can target an enemy ship. We may see one of those at the bottom, but I'm not sure. Depends on where the ship was cut off because of the sector size. Here's some more engines and some more detail structures. And keep in mind, I'm just flying a shuttle. My ship can't even equip weapons. That's how small it is compared to this thing. Looks like we're getting close to the bottom now. I'm not sure how much is left. We'll take a look. Yeah, pretty much very little left. I'd say about another 500 meters tops. So it's not that far off. And in fact, here is one of those massive glass fins. Although it is untextured, that is what it would look like on this ship. So that fin there is actually capable of detecting enemy ships and helping in their process of tracking them in space. Now, if I'm correct, this is where it's cut off. Yeah, it looks like it. So we'll take a look back up. The entire length of the ship. This ship specifically has slots for 2 turrets, although 4 turrets would actually be visible on the ship because of the way EVE Online displays its turrets and mounts and stuff like that. And here it is, in all its glory. Or at least half of it, because I don't think this is anywhere close to the entire length of the ship being displayed. But just look at that. Beautiful. Real quick, I'll spawn in another ship, just so you can get a size comparison. In my last video displaying the models that I imported, I showed a few Minmatar ships. One of my favorites was the Tornado. So we'll spawn in one of those, if I can spell it right. And we'll be taking a look at that compared to the sheer size of this capital ship next to us. Just look at that. I can't even load it in all the way. It's too small compared to this. Just look at that. Minmatar have really good looking ships, I gotta tell ya. Working on something that big would be one hell of a project. Now, I did say that I was going to be working on this ship and that I would make it a community build. Essentially, in order for that to happen, I need to gain some momentum on the Mushroom Fleet server and gain their trust, and I hope to do that by showing my capabilities as a builder. And essentially what I'm going to be doing is converting this model into a space station. People do not have to render the entire ship, of course. I cannot render it myself, but I am currently running this at 17 frames per second, so it's not impossible to play with a ship this large, especially if you turn down how many segments you're rendering. If you drop that down to a certain amount, then you won't really have to worry about rendering the entire thing, and it shouldn't have an impact on your performance as long as you don't fly into this ship. I don't think you'll have a problem. So I do plan on turning this into a space station and completing the external hull. And once I have completed the external hull and I have mapped out the insides, we will import it onto the Mushroom Fleet server or another server if need be, and we'll start work on a community project. That being said, this is a long-term goal and it will not be happening for a long time. I still want to get through a majority of the ships that I plan on getting through on my other series, New Eden Fleetworks, and this probably will not be happening for months, if not up to a year. By then the game will probably be out or released in some sort of beta, and we'll be seeing a lot more possibilities at that point in terms of the gameplay. Even though it's a ship, I just don't think it's practical to try and make this thing move. I'm sure that there are millions of blocks in this thing, considering how massive it is. Look how big these structures are. I am flying through the middle of this inside of a ship. That's how absolutely massive this is. So, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got a true sense of scale from this video. This is just a cool little thing that I'm going to be doing. I'll be continuing this over the course of the next few weeks, showing off different ships of capital size or larger from EVE Online. We'll be taking a look at freighters, carriers, super carriers, and dreadnoughts in this video series. And that's all for now. So thanks for watching. Subscribe to see some more. Give some feedback as always. Like the video if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys next time. It's one of the shuttles that I recently completed. You may have seen it in my previous video. And I cleared out the glass in the front so that the cameras were not obstructed, so that you can get the best view when I am taking this shuttle around the Naglfar, which is the first ship that I imported. It's the biggest one in terms of a longest axis. It is 5,137 meters long. So, let's get started. This is a Minmatar ship. It is a very unique looking ship. I will point out right now that the top of it got chopped off, and that's just because I didn't change the sector size to the right height when I started this, but that's okay. There really isn't much above or on the bottom of the ship that was cut off. The majority of it is still going to be loaded. So, it's a Minmatar ship, like I said, and it's very vertical. And it's massive. Let's take a look at this ship, because it is quite massive, and it's going to take us the entire length of this video to even get to the bottom, or from one end to the other. So I'm somewhere near the top, on some side of the screen, you should see a representation of the ship as well as an indicator displaying where I am relative to the ship. And we will be just looking around this ship and looking at just how massive this thing is. So, hello once again YouTube, Chris the Nightbringer here, bringing you a very special New Eden Fleetworks ship showcase video. Today we will be looking at a Dreadnought class, the second largest class of ship from EVE Online in StarMade. So as you can see, I am in a Caldari shuttle, you can see. And not sure if that's an actual turret hardpoint somewhere over there on the side of that hull, but it's entirely possible that the actual turret hardpoints are just so large that equipping a small turret would be impractical. And it would probably blow it up too, simply because of the amount of power required to supply these turrets with, you know, the energy required to fire their weaponry and all that stuff. Here's some of the engines.